Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome into the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And today we got a very special episode because it was Ja Morant's first game back. We're going to give y'all the live reaction to Ja's first game back and also the continued dominance of Jaren Jackson Jr. in that game as well. And also got a special announcement as this is going to be a shorter podcast this week, but that's because we are going to start posting on Tuesdays. So the full episode will drop on Tuesday. This is kind of like a teaser episode, I guess, before we start posting on Tuesdays from now on. But yeah, starting with that game, obviously the Rockets are not like a top tier team. They're actually like last in the West. It's one of the games that the Grizzlies should win, but when kind of fanfare around it, and I think that was definitely the case. And I really enjoyed the game overall. I think Ja played well, even though it was his first game coming off the bench. But yeah, it was an awesome game overall. I don't know if you have any just quick takeaways before we get into it, really.
Yeah, I mean, again, I feel like the Grizz, I never really felt like they were going to lose the game. Like, again, they're home. Like, it just felt good. Like, Ja back. Like, just felt like we was going to win the game. Now, I will say, real quick take, people's on my head about Ja coming off the bench. I understand he said he wanted to come off the bench. I understand they're trying to work him back in. But the Grizzlies like to do things very weird sometimes, and I still think it's very weird for him to come off the bench. That's just me personally, especially at the end of the game when it's a close game, and he's probably thinking like, well, I should put him back in because he can only play 24 minutes. Like, I understand Ja was away for a couple weeks, but wasn't like he hurt anything. He's going to be fine. He could have played 26, 27 minutes. It wouldn't hurt nobody. I wasn't tripping because it's the Rockets. But at the same time, again, I just thought it was unserious. But it's okay. It's okay. Grizzlies going to do weird stuff sometimes. And we just going to let it rock. But that's it. That's all. Let's go win.
I definitely think it was a little strange just because we've seen him come back, like you said, from injuries and stuff like that in the past. And he's come back from longer stints out. And he's been back in the starting lineup. But I do think it was still a good thing because I think in the long run, maybe it was a good thing, just not necessarily because of how he played, but more because the mindset that he was coming to it with of being like, I don't want to mess up the rhythm that they're in. Like that part of it is what I understood coming from Ja's part. I still think that like as a coach, maybe you think, okay, I love that that's what you want to do, but you're going to be starting the rest of the season. You've started every game, stuff like that. But I thought it was interesting to see how he came in with the second unit and then was kind of just like the spark plug off the bench. It was kind of interesting to see Ja in that role. And, Tyus still played really well as a starter and really did a good job feeding Jaren. And that was another thing that I noticed is that Ja's first play when he came into the game, he threw a lob to Jaren, and he also continued what Tyus have been doing and what the other guys have been doing of feeding him the ball when he's been on the stretch. And I think that's going to be huge going down the stretch for the Grizzlies too.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that they was actually like featuring Jaren just a little bit, like not featuring, but Ja specifically, because like he really is the one that, not to say he doesn't pass on the ball, but it seems like Ja, for as great as a passer Ja is, the most frustrating thing about Ja Morant's passing is that he can't make an entry. Well, I'm not gonna say he can't make an entry pass. He can, but it's probably the worst pass in his arsenal is making an entry pass. Like it blows my mind. And now this is not just a Ja problem. This is an NBA problem. Some fundamentals are lacking, and entry passes is one of them. That's why lack of post play has been around in the league for the last 3, 4, however many years. But there was a couple times where Jaren would seal, and he actually like threw him a little bounce pass in the entry. Like, then he would find him on the lob. Even Bane was finding him on the lob. Now, Bane missed him a couple of times, but even then, I'll take the pass that he did give him. So, yeah, they was throwing lobs. I mean, Ja didn't really seem like – Ja was in his – what I like to call Ja, like Ricky, like a true point guard bag. He wanted to – he didn't seem like he was trying to force the issue scoring the ball. You saw more of what he did in, like, year 1 and year 2, where he would where he basically would just – he's trying to show off that, hey, I'm more of a pass first guy, knowing for sure he can score 25 points a night. Like he that's his mindset. But I do like that because I think he needs to find a good balance of that. I've always said he needs to find a good balance of the two. And when he does that, that's when he's like elite level. But last night it seemed like he wasn't trying to do too much his first game back, which is fine. I mean, he played well. Like it wasn't like he played bad. And also his defensive activity, I think, was another thing that like stood out to me. Like he was actually like kind of like defending like for real, like most possessions. Like he was locked in, engaged. I never seen like and I know Houston got there, like they were scoring a lot of points, but it wasn't, I feel like, just his fault. Like I felt like as a team, most of the time they were lackadaisical defensively the whole night. For most part.
Yeah. I agree. I think they were lackadaisical defensively, like you said, but I think it's one of those things where it's like the Rockets haven't played any defense all season, and they weren't playing defense last night either. And it's almost like that brings you. It's like you want to play to their level. If they're not putting any defensive effort, it almost makes you not want to do it too. Well, it's not to say that's an excuse. You got to fight through that. But I think that's what they were dealing with, of like kind of playing to the level of your opponent and stuff like that. But I mean, overall, I still think that, like you said, Ja had a solid night. I agree that it was more like rookie Ja. If you look at his stats, I mean, he had 17. And then he had like 5 assists, 4 rebounds. That's more of like a rookie Ja stat line if you look at the stats. So I'm not surprised that he kind of took a step back just because of the quotes he had coming into the game. But yeah, I think that overall you can't ask for much more in his first game back, and they still got to win, and they've got another chance to continue to kind of put a little bit of cushion on the Kings now because they lost a couple games in a row. Grizzlies have now won 7 out of their last 8 games. So that's awesome to see. And they're going to have a chance, like we're going to talk about probably in the next episode, to push for the 1 seed if they want to. But yeah, just overall a win that needed to be done. And I think you saw everything that you needed to out of Ja. The poster dunk is like, it didn't take much time for him to get back to making highlights. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, that was tough. That poster dunk was pretty tough. Because when I saw the I think it was either a backdoor, I think he caught on the wing, and I'm like, okay, he's gonna drive and it looked like KJ's gonna meet him. So I'm thinking, oh, he's probably gonna try to dunk it or he's gonna get fouled.
Mm-hmm.
And then he dunked it. I'm like, oh, that's kind of tough. Like I
thought he was gonna try to do an up and under at first or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But he dunked on. I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of nasty. And then the other one where Bane hit him on, I think it was for his first bucket, where Bane hit him on the cut down the middle, because I think Bane drove baseline and they threw like a shovel pass to him, and I think it was like a left hand layup. I thought he was gonna dunk that one, but he ended up laying the ball up. So I was like, all right, well, I mean, but even then, like I said, Ja looked fine. Like, listen, like I said, he wasn't hurt. Now I understand, the whole thing and all that, getting back right mentally and physically, but like, I think his body, you could see that he was well rested, like he was rejuvenated. Like, and he wasn't. It didn't seem like he was playing sluggish at all. Like his minutes were fine. So I think he's gonna be all right, especially as he continues to get more conditioning, like back and just playing like games and doing practices. Like he'll be fine
for sure. And then kind of to shift over from the Ja side of it to the Jaren Jackson Jr. side of it, because even though this was Ja's night, Jaren definitely was the one that took it over because it wasn't his career high, but it was his most dominant game, and I think it was his most sustainable big game of his career. Because if you remember that 43-point game that is his career high, it was just he hit like 8 3-pointers, and he was just on fire. Yeah, right. This game, he had 37, and I think he only hit 1 3-pointer, and it's like dude was just a monster on the interior. He started, I think, 11 out of 11 on his shots in the paint. And it was just remarkable to see. He finished 13 out of 15 on non-3-point attempts. And it's just like that kind of efficiency. It just shows you that they had nobody that can do it. They threw multiple people at him. I know they threw Jabari Smith Jr. at him at first. That was a horrible decision. It was a horrible decision. Should not. I'm sorry. Listen, Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be a really good player one day. I watched him last year. I got to see him live last year when he came and played in Knoxville. But he is not. He's not ready for that kind of defensive assignment. Sengun tried to do what he could, but Sengun is like that's the thing about Jaren is you get a guy like Jabari Smith. he's supposed to be, oh, he's a smaller guy. He's a smaller, like, I mean, not necessarily like he's a tall guy, but, he's slender. He's supposed to be able to move. Jaren bullies him, right? Gets right to the paint. So let's bring in Sengun over here. This is a bigger guy. And he brings him out on the perimeter and he drives past him. And it's like that kind of versatility from a dude that is like 7 foot, 7'1". Like, honestly, I'm sure he might still be growing. Honestly, we don't even know. But when you got a dude that's that size that can do that, it's unstoppable. It's like it is actually unstoppable. And I think that's what the team has realized down this stretch. And I think you're seeing Jaren realize, like, oh, I actually am just way bigger than all of these dudes. And I have a mismatch in so many. Like, basically every time down the floor, he has a mismatch, regardless of who's guarding him. So that's going to be the big thing going down the stretch, especially in the playoffs, because everybody talks about the Grizzlies' main issue is their half-court offense. The easiest way to fix the half-court offense is to get easy buckets. And the easiest way to get easy buckets is to give Jaren Jackson Jr. the ball. And it's had great results over the last 8 games.
Yeah. The thing about, well, first to touch on what you talk about with them guarding him. Yeah, like I said, I was gonna say what you said. Jabari Smith's great. I'm a Jabari Smith fan. Like I'm a Jabari Smith dude. Like I liked him coming out of the draft. I still do. Like, some people writing him off. He's starting to go on a little hot streak. I think this last month or last couple weeks. But again, like there was a couple plays. Like you just like he's gonna be good. His body's gonna fill out. Like but he's only 19. Jaren's 5 years in, like, because Jaren had to go through the same thing, progression-wise, strength-wise. So he's just too little. Like, I think there was one time he caught it. I think Brevin had talked about it. He caught it at, like, the free throw line, and he took, like, 2 dribbles, and he dunked it with his left hand. Like, it's a 2 strong dribbles, just backed him down. I was like, yeah, this is, like, they couldn't do anything with him. Like, there was nobody that could guard him. And it was just fun to watch. Like, he just, like, it's just easy. Like, he's understanding where to pick. Like he said, I think he said it. It's like, it's about spots. And that's really what it comes down to. For him, a player like him, it's all about spots and angles. So, like, if you get him where he can get to his left hand a lot, which you're going to go to, then he's unstoppable. And it's not saying he doesn't have a right, because he can use his right, but, like, he's one of those type of players where they might just use their dominant hand, but it's going to be – you're going to have a hard time stopping it, especially with him being 6'11", 7 feet, and he's like 245, 250. And he can move a little bit like a guard. Like, he's strong driver. So, like, it's just tough. And then on top of that, just for him, they, with the half-court offense, it's more so not just about Jaren, but I've always said it. It's about running your stuff to your best players. There were a few times in the end of the game, or literally the last 2 possessions, I think it was, where they involved Ja, Jaren, Bane in that action, and they got either a bucket or a good look every time. And that's always been I won't say problem with Jenkins. I don't have a problem with Jenkins, but my criticism with Jenkins is he'll make his offense harder than what it needs to be, because a lot of it will be Ja isolation and then everybody just sitting around and watching, versus you putting Bane in a simple down screen action or involving Jaren in another action. Like they did that last night, where I think it was Ja had the ball, then they gave it to Jaren, then Jaren ran a DHO with Bane, and then he set him another screen, or like he re-screened, and then they got something out of it. Like, it's just simple. Like, it's just that, and like, I'm not asking for him to be like, creative out the box, but just run it through your best players, because that is just going to open up so much more for your offense. So, and that included is Jaren just throwing him the ball, especially in half court, because in playoff situations, it's all about mismatches. And you have to abuse those mismatches, like, every time down. Like, that's literally what playoff basketball is about. If there's somebody on the court that can't guard nobody, they're going to run the same play 10, 15 times until you make an adjustment on it. And so they're going to have to do that. And we saw that last night. They were giving Jaren the ball like 3, 4, 5 possessions in a row at times.
To start the game, they did it too. Like, yeah, at exactly, the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, exactly. That too. So my thing is, like, you're going to have to do that in the playoffs even more, maybe. And so, I'm not saying you got to give it to him. Like, he doesn't have to have 30, 35 shots every night. Yeah. But I'm saying, when there's a mismatch, you gotta take advantage of it. It doesn't matter, like, because that's how you're gonna win playoff games and win series and get to where they're ultimately trying to get to. So, yeah, no, it was good. Listen, I'm here for it. We'll talk about it more later on, but listen, I've been here. This is the vision I've been seeing for Jaren. So it's good to see it play out finally.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is the vision I think everybody's had for him ever since his first year. And I know he's had a lot of criticisms in like his first couple seasons, but I think it was mostly just people kind of not understanding that it was going to take some time. They drafted him when he was 18 years old, right? He was still 18. Like he played most of that like first year. He was barely 18 years old. So when he was playing in college, and then he had like I think he just turned 19 right when the
He's
season
like
started.
freshly 19, bro. Like,
Yeah, so like this is a dude that started playing college basketball like right after his 18th birthday. So he's a very young guy, and you look at it now. We're in year 5. He's only 23. So there's a lot of stuff that can go on from now on. I think he's going to continue to get better. When you look at like his career projection and stuff like that, when you look at how good he is already and how much better you know he can be, especially when you see like this version of him, because if he plays like this, and you know, obviously you got to be able to show it for longer stretches than 5 games, but he's averaging 30 a game over the last 5. I'm not saying he's going to average 30 a game for the rest of the season or anything crazy like that, but seeing that, like, when you do it 5 times in a row, that's not a fluke. You know what I mean? And it's not like it was only against scrub teams or anything. Like he had 31 points, and he was mostly getting guarded by Draymond Green in that game. And Draymond Green is going to go down as one of the best defenders in the history of the NBA, regardless of what you think about him or his antics on or off the court. That's a fact. He's going to go down as one of the best defenders that has ever played the game. And Jaren gave him 31. So it's like, it's not like he's just doing it against the Rockets. Like, he is doing it in big games. And I think that if we can continue to see him kind of develop this part of his game, the sky's the limit. But I have to get a little bit to, because obviously we got to talk about Desmond Bane too a little bit, because he had 20 points and he had 11 in that fourth quarter down the stretch. Like you said, Jenkins running his plays for his best 3 players. But also, there were some other contributions off the bench. Not talking about Ja. I know he came off the bench. That doesn't count. But I'm just,
Ja.
yeah, 6th man of the year, Ja Morant coming through. But I'm talking about Luke Kennard, and I'm talking about well, I guess David Roddy technically started, but Luke Kennard and David Roddy, the people that are going to be coming off the bench going forward. Those two, I feel like they both had really solid games. David Roddy came out and started the game, had 11 in the first quarter, continuing to show that he can be a rotation piece. And I think he's going to be a rotation piece from now on. And then Luke Kennard, I'm saying it right here. I've already tweeted it like 3 times. Luke Kennard, the most underrated acquisition at the trade deadline. Everybody was looking at Kevin Durant. I get it. Everybody was looking at all these other trades. Oh, Kyrie went to the Mavs. And it kind of felt like Luke Kennard going to the Grizzlies was kind of like at the footnote at the end of all the trade deadline articles. But when you look at the way that the Grizzlies have played since the trade deadline, they have I think they have the 2nd best record in the West since the trade deadline. So if you're talking about which of those moves actually impacted winning the most, because keep in mind, Steven Adams has been out. Ja Morant has missed 9 of those games since the deadline. And the fact that BC tore his Achilles, right? So it's like they lost players and added Luke Kennard, but they're still playing great. Now, obviously, Jaren has been playing awesome too, but I think that having him, I mean, he had another 15-point night. He's been in double figures, multiple, I think like 5, like all of the last like 5 games, it feels like.
Yeah, it's like 5 or 6 games.
So, yeah, he's been just awesome since he's been here. And just, he opens up the floor so much for everybody else. And that's what Jaren said. I was listening to the Mismatch podcast where they did the live show, and Jaren was talking about every time Luke shoots the ball, he doesn't know if it's going to go in or not, but he said the time from when it leaves his hand to when it hits the basket, he's feeling really good about himself. That's what he said. And I think that's how every Grizzlies fan should feel every time he shoots the ball.
Yeah, with Luke, I don't think he misses. Or I haven't felt like every time he shoots the ball, I don't think he's going to miss. But yeah, I think Luke even talked about it. There was a quote I saw. He's basically saying they're on him about him being aggressive. And I'm always said, like, the best version of Luke is him being aggressive. Like, I don't want Luke. I want to see box scores, and I'm looking at Luke like I'm looking at right now, where he's playing against the Mavericks and Lakers, and he's only taking 4 shots and 2 threes and 3 threes. I don't need to see that. I need to see what I've seen the last 5 games: 5 threes, 7 threes, 8 threes, and this is attempts. I'm not talking about makes. He's gonna make them. He shoots 40. With us, he's shooting 49% from three. On the season, he's shooting 40,
ridiculous.
45. Like in career average, he's 43. Like he's a shooter. So, again, because Kleiman, I'm gonna talk about Zach Kleiman a little bit because he got a little bit of criticism because everybody's like, man, he should have made a big splash move at the deadline, or because we were kind of struggling or whatever you want to call it. People were saying, and people was on his case, and I'm like, look, once he did that Kennard move, I'm like, made sense. He addressed the issue that they had, which was consistent shooting. They are a streaky shooting team, home and road. You just don't see it at home because they're very good at home, and their margin of error is better at home. But on the road, it shows up. But that's what in games like the Spurs, against the Spurs, he had 4 threes. He hit, what was it, that one key 3 to come back in the game before that Dillon 3? Like he hits big shots, and like he said, he opens up the floor for your best players, which is what I think is the best version of this team is having shooters around your best players, specifically Ja, because it's going to be hard to guard a guy like Ja that creates as much rim pressure as he does. And then you basically got to pick your poison of he's going to play one-on-one coverage with the big and the drop, or you're going to have somebody in the help, and he's going to find his shooters. So I think Luke is adding an element to this team that really was needed. And if you play him in the right lineups, like playing him with Jaren, playing him with defensive guys, the lack of defense that he has, because he's not a terrible defender, he's an IQ defender, but I mean he's physically limited. So he's not going to be able to guard like the best players. But if you know how to play him in certain lineups, and I think Jinx has done a good job of that, then you're going to see these type of results. But he has to continue to be aggressive, even when regardless of who's out there. I want him to get these shots up. I'm not going to care about the percentages. I know he's going to make a lot of them because a lot of them going to be open anyway because he knows how to pick his spots and get to where he needs to be. So, Luke is hooping. Luke's him. Listen, I like Luke Kennard. I'm a Luke Kennard fan. So.
No, and you talk about what is Zach Kleiman needed to do with the deadline, and I think a lot of the things that people were worried about was if he didn't do anything. I think that's what people worried. If he didn't do anything at the deadline, it would have been an issue. But there was I know people were talking about they should get KD and they should get this and they should do that, and it's that has never really been the MO of this team. I know they made the Justice Winslow deal, Ja's rookie year. And that's really the only trade deadline move that they have made that was a big move. And it didn't work out. So I don't know. But this one seems a lot better. And when you consider, right, you give up Danny Green. And Danny Green, I think, played 3 games. And then you give up second-round picks. Which at this point, second-round picks, when you're at the point of development that the Grizzlies are, where they have all these young guys, they have a lot of rookies, they have stuff like that. Second-round picks, that's free candy. You can just give that out. It doesn't matter. Okay, you lost some second round picks, whatever, right? You're going to second round picks don't mean anything when you already really just in the NBA in general. Second round picks. You saw people getting traded for 5 second round picks. Half of the second round picks don't even end up playing games in the NBA. So, it's one of those things where you basically got them for free compared to what you had before we got there, because Danny Green wasn't playing. Second round picks aren't playing yet, even if 2 or 3 years from now. So it's one of those things where if you can get a guy like that basically for free, that is one of percentage wise, I think he's top 10 or 11 in the history of the NBA in 3-point percentage. You do that 100 times out of 100. And I think that has been an awesome move. And I think it's underrated in terms from a national media scale. But I think that when you get to the postseason and you see another thing, we haven't even seen Luke play with Ja that much either, especially now that he's finally gotten into this rhythm. And the amount of open looks he's going to get when Ja drives to the basket and is drawing 2 or 3 defenders, dude is going to be wide open. And I'll take a wide open Luke Kennard 3 at the end of every possession if that's what we're getting.
Yeah, and the thing is, like I said, with this team, especially as good as they are defensively, they don't need now. Not to say it wouldn't hurt to have a top 5 offense, and I obviously need to get back to top 10. And they've been creeping up. I think they're 13th now, tied for 13th. We've seen them when they're hitting threes with this defense. They're damn near hard to beat. They don't lose a lot of games when they hit at least league average or top 15 type teams average of threes. Because I think they're below average in terms of makes. I'd have to look, but that's why Luke adds that much, because he gives you more room for margin of error on offense, man. If you have a bad position, if you have turnovers, especially when he's because again, like in today's NBA, to some degree, not to say it's all about analytics, but it is a math equation sometimes when you don't make a lot of threes. It's just very hard to overcompensate it when you're making not maybe like 8 to 9, 10 threes. You probably need more 14, 15 threes to make. So sometimes you're just going to need a guy like Luke where he can give you those 2 or 3 extra threes that you need in the game that keeps you, whether it keeps you in the league, gets you in the league, like especially with the defense that you have the defensive player of the year, in my opinion, and Jaren, like you're going to be able to get stops. It's about how can you manufacture points, and he'll give you some points, especially not only from 3, he can do a little bit inside the arc too, but mainly shooting. That's what he is. That's his role on this team. But the thing about him, he's not just a shooter too. He can kind of, create a little bit out in the pick roll, a little bit. He knows how to make the right pass. Like he has a good feel for the game. So he does fit the archetype for what the front office looks for in that as well.
And this is going to be the last thing I'll say before I close, because you mentioned the Jaren Defensive Player of the Year thing, and this is the last thing. Brook Lopez is not even the best defender on his team. He might not be the second best defender on his team.
Speak on it.
If he gets Defensive Player of the Year over Jaren, then it will be a travesty. Come on, man. This dude literally turned the Grizzlies from the 20th defense in the NBA to the first defense at one point, and they're still top 5 now. When Jaren came back, they were in the bottom 3rd in defense. Like,
I think we might have been last, low key. I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, it's bad. It's real bad.
It was not good. It was not good.
Like
just one player having that turnaround. That's what I'm saying. And it's like, not to say that I think Brook Lopez is a really good player, but he's not the Defensive Player of the Year. I know he's had a lot of blocks and everything, but it's like, dude, if I would rather you give me a Giannis argument than a Brook Lopez argument if you're gonna argue for somebody on the Bucks, because they do have the best defense in the league. And I get that Brook Lopez is a really great defender. I just don't feel like he has that same impact on the team, and not just because he has better defenders around him, but it's like if you take Brook Lopez out of the lineup, I don't think the Bucks defense gets that much worse. That's just, now you can tell me I'm wrong. Maybe if he misses time another time we can figure that out, but they still have great defenders at every other position. So that's my take on it. You can say it's biased, whatever, but Jaren Jackson Jr. is the Defensive Player of the Year. You heard it here. Definitely not first, because a lot of people have been saying it, but it's a fact.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connor even said he said he has a vote. He said, like, I was listening to the live podcast as well. He said he's going to vote for Jaren because he said a good point. It's like, it's what you value. Do you value rim protection or perimeter defense? Jaren does both. He's more of a rim protector, but he does both. We saw it. Shout out to Bryson. We saw it in that Mavs game, the little Kyrie clip. He was guarding him, and that was only one of like 4 or 5 other times where he was guarding him in that fourth quarter and staying in front. And then even earlier this year, I think it was a long time ago I posted it, but like when they played the Cavs, that when Steven Adams had that tip in, he guarded Darius Garland on an island by himself. Darius Garland, one of the shiftiest players in the league, stayed in front and blocked his shot at the rim to end the possession. And that ended up being one of the possessions that I think that led to them getting that, or that led to, I think, Dylan Brooks getting that block after that. So, like, bruh, he's different on that end. Like, he is special on that end. Like, he's him. I'm not going to say it too much. You already went over the stats. I'm not going to say it too much more. Like, he should be getting Defensive Player of the Year. Should be, but we'll see. But he should be. This should be one of many this year. I'm hoping. So.
We'll hope. But as always, thank y'all for listening and thank y'all for watching this episode of the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. And make sure to become a Bluff City Media Insider. Go to bluffcitymedia.com/join to do that. For Alex Winton, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and we'll see y'all actually in a couple days.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.